Electra Heart is the sophomore studio album by the artist Marina Diamandis, formerly known as Marina and the Diamonds. The album is ahead of its time for sure, but does it hold up today? Let's tackle the nostalgia and see how good it still is. You're watching Tumblr Retrospective on the Current. I'm currently revisiting all the albums that were super popular on Tumblr, so check out those other videos if you haven't. And if you're interested in that and more music reviews, film analysis, and pop culture, please subscribe to my channel for more content. Let's get started. Marina Diamandis is a 39-year-old singer, lyricist, and producer from Wales. Her career took off with her debut album, The Family Jewels, with hits such as Oh No, I Am Not a Robot, and Hollywood. The album was very critically acclaimed. She's a self-proclaimed DIY artist who got her start selling her own made CDs to record shops, and probably one of the first artists to get famous off of MySpace. This lady was determined to be famous. The and the diamond suffix used to mean Marina and her fans, because her surname just means diamond in Greek. However, Diamandis announced via Twitter in 2018 that she would be dropping her and the Diamonds moniker to release as simply Marina. She explained, "It took me well over a year to figure out that a lot of my identity was tied up in who I was as an artist, and there wasn't much left of who I was." What I thought was crazy in doing research for this record is that Lana Del Rey's Born to Die actually came out before this record. I would have thought that Electra Heart came out first just because it has more of that classic electropop early 2010s sound. However, it was still ahead of its time. Essentially, Marina was one of the first artists that would embrace this aesthetic that was very much analog, with old TV and film combined with vintage aesthetics, vintage clothing, and analog media. The analog aspect is very much visible in the album artwork and in the music video for Prima Donna. And what I also thought was very fun to find out is that she toured with Katy Perry. And when I heard about this, it just made so much sense to me, because Katy Perry was like the queen of pop around that time, and I think Marina's record label was going for some kind of similar vibe, but maybe a little bit darker. It was definitely in the same vein with the electropop aspects that were very popular in the early 2010s, and the producers that Katy Perry worked with also came over to work on this album. So, let's talk about the album artwork. As per usual, there was not that much to find about this album artwork, so I'm going to come away with my own little interpretation. Electra Heart is a concept album lyrically united by the ideas of female identity and a recent breakup. Diamandis created the titular character, Electra Heart, as a protagonist for the project. She portrays the personas housewife, beauty queen, homewrecker, idol teen, which represents several female archetypes of stereotypical American culture. She cited her inspiration for the album being an antichrist of heartbreak and a Britney Spears if she was goth. Other influences that she had cited in various interviews for this album were Kate Bush, Madonna, of course Britney Spears, and Marilyn Monroe. On the cover we see Marina, which I can only assume as the titular character Electra Heart, very much in the classic pin-up style with the hair rollers and even a little analog filter on the top, combined with an italic Cooper font spelling out Marina and the Diamonds and the album title. Definitely a precursor to an aesthetic that would be popular on Tumblr years later. So, let's get into the music. In an interview with Glamour, she was asked, "Did someone in particular inspire your single Prima Donna, or is it metaphorical?" Yes. When you are with the wrong person who doesn't really love you, all you want is to be adored. It makes you more inward and needy. Gross! So I flipped the pages and channeled the idea of being a person who didn't need anybody. A prima donna who was adored the entire world over. What I also thought was really interesting to learn about this album is that it debuted at #1 on the UK albums chart, with first week sales of 21,358 copies, and it became her first chart-topping album in the United Kingdom, although at the time, it was additionally distinguished as the lowest selling #1 record of the 21st century at that time. Marina was very fascinated with the United States while making this album, and she had cited that when she finished her first album, that for her second album, she really wanted to be in the United States while she was recording and writing this album. She was very fascinated with the country and cites the American dream and a kind of idea where you can be anyone that you want in the United States. Your current image seems to be playing off the ideas you were interested in before, the Americanization of fame, etc. Now it seems to really be reaching a fuller form. You're joking about being a huge pop star, but you're also Diamandis cuts him off. I'm being genuine in saying that I want to be it. This album hones a very, very heavy electropop sound that was super popular in the early 2010s. It has some 80s references in there, which definitely reminds one of Madonna, as Diamandis has cited. She commented that she was inspired by the Tumblr generation to photograph herself in several places across the United States, appearing as a different persona in each picture to mimic the anonymity of many stars of the internet. So this album is very theatrical, not only in the way Marina is singing. What I also thought was interesting to learn is that she is actually not classically trained. The aesthetic and lyrical collage of this album are very theatrical, especially in songs like Starring Role, The State of Dreaming, and Prima Donna. I do think this album has very creative lyricism and is very good at comparing the state of a relationship to a performance, which was original at the time. I mean, it's a concept album after all, and I do think that it does a really good job at being a concept album. So first of all, we have Bubblegum Bitch. Right off the bat, we get a banger of a song on this album, a great introduction to the character of Electra Heart, and very much the personification of the Antichrist of heartbreak. It has these pop-punk inflections and lots of personality, and I do think that this is one of the better songs on the album. In an interview with Glamour, she was asked, "There are some strong references to female empowerment at play here. Indeed, it was really helpful for me in terms of getting my confidence back again, that I could step back and laugh and feel almost invincible through writing a song like Home Wrecker, that I could step back and laugh and feel almost invincible through writing a song like Home Wrecker or Bubblegum Bitch. I think when you're with the wrong person in a relationship, you start to see yourself differently. I felt very ugly when I was with a certain person because he made me feel ugly inside. He wouldn't even touch me in public. And when I look back at those photos, I feel kind of sad because I look just fine." So the big hit from this album is Prima Donna. It is probably the song that if you hear it and you're around my age, you remember it. And it had some notable remixes that were also very popular. I don't hear it that much these days. I do think it's probably one of the cult classic songs that came out of 2012. And as I mentioned before, the Katy Perry connection is very strong here because it is unfortunately produced by Dr. Luke. However, it does make sense because around this time, Marina had a big goal of becoming the biggest pop star in the world. Thanks to Dr. Luke, Liam Howe, and a few other big-time producers who helped her craft her highly anticipated second album, it was part of a move to become the biggest pop star on the planet. Dr. Luke's input, she says, has not changed her opinion of the album in light of the sexual assault allegations made against him by Kesha. He denies them and is suing Kesha for defamation. "Because it was part of my creativity, and there is definitely a significant thing that has happened, but it hasn't changed how I feel about those songs." She noted in another interview that Kesha will win in the end. But yeah, I was a bit upset learning about this because I felt like this was one of the only songs on the record that actually feels a little bit more finished than the other ones. And I think it's also just a product of the time. There's a few songs on this album that maybe repeat a little bit too long, longer than necessary at least. And this is probably one of the reasons why songs these days are so short. But perhaps that is why I'm not used to having so much repetition on this album, but it feels like it can kind of linger on a little bit too long. But yeah, obviously this song is fantastic. It makes me sad knowing that I played this song. I was giving money to Dr. Luke. So yeah, I do think you guys should be made aware. But yeah, regardless, I do feel the same as Marina. I do think I have good memories attached to this song, and it was ahead of its time for sure. And I do think she really shows her personality when it comes to vocal style. And I think the subject matter as well is something that was, feminist and definitely a game changer for the era. And we have Home Wrecker, which is probably the song that Tumblr resonated with the most, and the site definitely related to certain lyrics that were made into GIFs many a time, such as, "I don't belong to anyone. I guess you could say that my life's a mess, but I'm still looking pretty in this dress. When everything is life and death, you may feel like there's nothing left. Instead of love and trust and laughter, what you get is happy never after." And what I thought was sad, also finding out during research for this record, when I was listening to it after finding it out, was that there is a few references to bulimia that Marina has admitted that she has struggled with. For example, on this song, "Girls and their curls and their gourmet vomit." Tumblr is quite notorious for having a very strong ED culture, which is very unfortunate. And I think this album, unfortunately, played a role in the relationship that Tumblr users had with ED content on the site. And I also thought it was quite sad to read this excerpt from the same Glamour interview. You've changed your look quite a bit recently. Loving it, by the way. Who was your style inspiration? Thank you. I've always been obsessed to the core with Marilyn Monroe. Also Madonna, and for the theatrical romantic side, a pinch of old Marie Antoinette. The clothes are very 60s, 70s cheap thrift store. I'm very curvy, so the vintage stores suit me better than most designers. I just can't seem to give up crisps, or make my boobs shrink for that matter. Alas, I will never fit a size 0. From Independent, Marina Diamandis, known under the stage name Marina and the Diamonds, has opened up about her struggles with bulimia. Diamandis, 39, experienced disordered eating issues until 2012. Diamandis said she no longer struggles to speak about bulimia openly thanks to her 12 years of recovery. With recovery, you're told you will never recover completely, which I haven't found to be true, she added. I feel fully recovered. Looking back to that time, it's almost unbelievable because I don't relate to that person. It comes shortly after Diamandis revealed she was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome in 2023. Diamandis shared that she was only diagnosed after 7 years of health issues, adding that it's been hard to remember what being healthy feels like. The body wants to heal, and what I've learned is that you have to work with it, not against it. So then we have Power and Control, which was one of the other singles off of the album. I think it's one of the better songs on this record. I think it still holds up. I think it's very catchy. And I'm sorry, I'm noticing that my ear is just getting really red. So just ignore that for a second. I do think that this song has aged the best and still holds up the most in the commentary that it's making. I also think that the electro pop production on this song holds up the most and has aged the best on the album. Definitely. So I have 2 songs left to talk about. Then we have Teen Idol, a song that the producer had named Lana Del Rey as an inspiration for. And I very much hear that in the crowd backup vocals that are used in the song that just say, super, 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 super. And then it follows by Suicidal, so can you get more Tumblr than that? Yeah, this is the other song with the vomiting reference. I want blood, guts, and angel cake. I'm gonna puke it anyway. Also mentioning prom queens, 16 and burning up Bibles, wasted youth. And this song reminds me of one time in an interview when she was asked what inspired the album. Her tone suddenly gets very serious and she just says depression and being lonely on tour and having a struggle with drinking and just generally having a hard time mentally. And I do think that, the lyrical content of, pretending to be someone else, comparing a heartbreak with performing and a stage play is very indicative of how she was feeling at the time, but I'm getting ahead of myself a bit. So let's talk about Hippocrates. Again, very strong Madonna influence on this song. She brings back her 80s background, and I do think that this is probably a nod to her alternative background, a little bit of this indie type of sound. So many technical difficulties today, I'm so sorry. But yeah, Hippocrates, and I like the reference to Greek mythology. No, not mythology. Greek tragedy? Wait, let's look this up. So yeah, then we have Hippocrates, which is coincidentally purposely misspelled. That kind of threw me off a bit. I thought it was a reference to Greek tragedy, but as a philosophy student, I'm very disappointed in myself. I didn't realize that it was actually referencing the philosopher Hippocrates, but alas. And this song's about being a hypocrite. I mean, I do think that this is probably one of the strongest songs on the album sonically. But yeah, I'm gonna start wrapping it up. I don't have that much time left on my memory card, but I do think that this album was one of a kind. It was named by this music publication as one of the best concept albums of all time. But yeah, like I just alluded to, I think I could tell when I was doing research for this video that she was not really in a good mental place. It really felt like she was putting on a mask and pretending, especially learning about the bulimia that she has opened up about, that being true. Sometimes when the interviewers were asking her questions about what the songs were about, she would kind of laugh it off and not really respond. I had read more recent interviews with her, and reading that she didn't relate to who she was in this era was kind of relieving to me because it means that she has grown and taken a step away from the character of Electra Heart. But at the same time, it makes me kind of sad because it's almost a bit of a parody, the character that she's playing, and she's almost kind of referring to herself and her love life, which she has mentioned in interviews that the album is about her, but she's kind of playing it up through this character. And I didn't know where else to put this other than at the end, but I mean, the subject matter of this album is quite serious, and the video interviews that I watched didn't really reflect that. I also didn't necessarily see anything online asking her about the bulimia references that were covered up, certainly, but noticeable, concerning at the very least, and especially her opening up much later. I just noticed that there was a big disconnect between what she really meant and intended for this album and what interviewers were asking her. So what I thought was incredibly annoying was how every interviewer was only focused on her touring with Coldplay. Oh my god, did she tour with Coldplay? I think she toured with Coldplay. You guys, she toured with Coldplay. I think she toured with Coldplay. But yeah, again, this album lyrically was ahead of its time, and people didn't really seem to understand and didn't really ask about musical references, inspiration that much. She was asked about her fashion style and not necessarily about the content of the album, which I thought was disappointing, especially when you compare it to the Arctic Monkeys videos that I watched last week, where they were very much asking about references, getting comparisons to Black Sabbath, to Elvis, actually talking about where the inspiration comes from musically. And I felt like she wasn't really taken seriously. I mean, it was 2012, but yeah, that was a bit disappointing for me. But yeah, so reflecting on this album, is it still good? I do think it has aged not so great. I did notice when I was listening to the album, like I said before, that it sometimes felt like it was going on a little bit too long, but I know that this is not really my type of style of music that I listen to. I was never really a big Marina and the Diamonds fan. I mean, I really liked Hollywood at the time, and I like Prima Donna as a song, okay? Don't get me wrong. I do think that's a banger. It's a cultural icon song of that era, very much defining 2012, and it was ahead of its time, and I do commend the album for painting such a specific image, and I will say it's very creative, it's very well written. Like, she's talented. I will not undermine that whatsoever. But if we're talking in regards to taste, I don't think it has aged that great. Are there still some songs on this album that are very good and timeless? Yes, but should I put that in? Yeah, if I was to remix this album, I probably would make some songs shorter. But yeah, I digress. It just felt like she wasn't really being true to herself, and almost like she was doing a parody of herself. And I guess that was kind of the goal. It was definitely a character that she was putting on, right? But the story behind it and knowing what was going on behind the scenes just made me kind of sad. And I don't think I could enjoy this album in that way, knowing that that was what was going on behind the scenes, and especially with people relating to it in that way when it comes to the bulimia and stuff like that. Besides the Dr. Luke production on the album as well, yeah, I can't say that I enjoy this album very much. Where is Marina now? So, she is actually fully back. She has recently released a poetry book called Eat the World, which was also one of the sources where she had opened up about her bulimia. I do think she has changed for the better. She has grown very much. She is now also in her late 30s, and I'm wondering to see where she's going next. She has a new song coming out on the 21st of February called Butterfly, so look forward to that if you're a Marina fan. Yeah, and I also wanted to read this excerpt from the interview with the iPaper. I feel great that these Britney Spears documentaries have come out because it feels like a culture shifter, she says. People were suddenly having these conversations. Perhaps as a further reminder of the progress made by society, however small, the Amanda says she sometimes revisits old reviews from the start of her career. Certain people had full-on hatred for female artists of my era, she says. It's interesting to look at it now with different eyes. There's been a shift in what we perceive authenticity to be. In the past, on the eve of releasing a new album, she would be constantly worried about backlashes and the misogynistic crap coming her way. And now, I just feel like I've got nothing to lose, she states. This is the work I want to put out. And yeah, as for her album, she had put on her very infamous Twitter account, for non-poetry fans, I'm off to finish the album. She has also announced that she will be touring festivals in the coming summer with an appearance at Coachella and Governor's Ball. So if you're a Marina fan, please let me know in the comments how you look back on this album. Is it very special to you, or have you not revisited it in a long time? Please let me know. I would love to know. And as for today, I'm finally done filming. Oh my god, I had so many humps. Thank you so much for watching. Again, look forward to another Tumblr retrospective next week. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for watching, and please like the video if you enjoyed it, and I will see you next week. Peace. Oh my god, it's done.